Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another podcast. Welcome, Dr. Omer Atilla Ergi.
Hello, Dr. Zuleyha. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you for another topic. And today we're going to be focusing on the Qur'aniyin or the Quranists, which is a movement, really, and that's growing. Can you tell us a bit about what it covers? Because some people might have seen examples of it at play, but they may not know where it's coming from.
Okay. Well, recently, I've been encountering this group, I should say, or this movement. It's quite modern when you think about it, because when you go back to the early days of Islam, the formative period, classical period, you don't see such a concept in that era. But recently, we see more and more people coming up. I see it under the videos too, and they make comments and things like that. They are basically not accepting Hadith, to be honest.
At all? Like no Hadith at all?
No Hadith at all. And they're saying, the Qur'an was revealed for all of us, all of humanity. We can open, read the Qur'an and practice it. And they sort of, when they defined prophethood, being a Rasul, being Nabi, when they describe or define prophethood, they say, the prophet duty is to bring the message of Allah, God Almighty, and that duty is concluded after that.
Right.
So that's the main view. In fact, some of them even, make the distinction between being a Rasul and Nabi. And they use that intentionally, Rasul and Nabi, and as the Quran says it as well, the Prophet is Khatamul Anbiya. He is the last of the Nabis. So being a Nabi has finished. That's what they're saying. But in a way, they're leaving a door open for Rasul.
Oh, that's why they're highlighting that he's a Nabi. Just for our audience, for those who may not know what a Nabi, the difference between a Nabi and Rasul, can you just expand on that?
I think that's very important because the mistake they are making is, the distinction between a Rasul and Nabi is only a theological solution. The Quran doesn't make that distinction. The Quran doesn't say Rasul is a different person, Nabi is a different person. But the solution is this. The reason the scholars came up with this is, you have, for example, Musa alayhi salam, who received the Tawrat, but at the same time, his brother became a prophet too, Harun. But he was a Nabi. So they were making that distinction to solve that issue.
So one received revelation message and the other one didn't.
Well, yeah. Well, they both received revelation. All prophets do. But one received a book. So a book is like a new Sharia, new rules or new laws. So they are called Rasuls in Islamic theology. And those who follow the Sharia, the book of the previous Rasul, are called Nabi. But Nabis also receive revelation, but they don't receive a book, a new law.
So they follow the law of the previous prophet?
Previous prophet, exactly. However, all Rasuls are Nabis as well, because Nabi is a prophet. All Rasuls are Nabis, but not all Nabis are Rasul, because they don't receive book, all of them. So that's the only distinction, but the Quran doesn't make that distinction because, like for example, when the Quran talks about Ismail alayhi salam, the son of Ibrahim, the Quran says he was a Rasul and Nabi. But Ismail never received a book. So Quran doesn't really make that distinction. So it's only a theological solution. But these people, they say, there's a difference between them. When they leave the door open for Rasul, what they're actually implying is everyone can be a Rasul.
Wow.
See? Everyone can be a Rasul because you're just, carrying the message of Allah.
Yeah.
But Nabi has a duty, completed his duty and finished.
So so they're suggesting or opening the door, leaving it open that everyone can be a Rasul?
In a way, yeah.
In a way, which means they can receive the messenger and they can interpret and So how would that play out in today's time?
So look, when you take the Quran and read it and convey it to others, you are like a messenger. That's what they're saying. But we know the Prophet was the last messenger and the last, Nabi.
Yeah.
Because the Quran says, about Prophet Muhammad wasalam, he is a Rasul and a Nabi. And he is the last of the Nabis. So in a way, they're also making this excuse. He has completed his mission. He brought the Quran. But to me, that sounds very offensive to our noble Prophet, wasalam. Putting him in a position where he's like the postman,
Yeah.
just brings the message and puts it into your mailbox or something.
And then you decide how to understand it and read it?
Yes. Yeah. And they say, the Quran came to all of us. No, in fact, technically, that's not correct too. Yes, Quran came for all of us to follow, but the Quran was revealed to Prophet Muhammad. It was revealed to him. He was the addressee, the first addressee. So who could know the Quran better than him? No one can know that. So when they follow this path where, it's called, like you said, Qur'anian or the Quranists, so they reject the Hadith altogether. They say everyone can open the Quran and follow the Quran itself only.
Okay, that's the importance, emphasis on the Rasul. Everyone can open it and understand it, interpret it as they want.
Okay, yeah. That's the understanding. But maybe many people don't know where this comes from, the ideology, because
it sounds like a modern phenomenon. I don't think it's existed for a very long time.
It is. Look, 1800s, goes back to 1800s. It comes from the subcontinent, British India, I should say, when Britain came into rule India. There is a man called Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, a reformist. He is the first one to suggest something like this, modernize Islam or reform Islam. It originated with him, but later on, as I remember, Abdullah Chakralawi, a man called Abdullah Chakralawi, he actually turned it into an establishment, a movement, and he said, Quran is enough for us.
That was his slogan,
it's like a slogan. He said that's why he's completely neglecting, Hadith and Sunnah. Whereas we know from the 1400 years of scholarship, as you know, the first main source of Islam is the Quran and then the Sunnah. Isn't it? The second source of Islam is Sunnah, And I always say you cannot practice and live Islam without Sunnah.
Yeah.
It is not possible because it's he, our noble Prophet, that showed us how to practice Islam, how to live Islam.
So we'll look at some examples a bit later, but what was the agenda, what was the intention with trying to strip Islam of the Hadith, do you think, with these individuals?
It's easier to live.
Okay.
Look, I reckon, to be honest, there is the British behind it, to be honest. Because when you look at that, plus, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, they gave him that title too. I think there's the British behind it, because when you separate Hadith from the Quran, you are actually dividing Muslims. There's no doubt about that, because everyone can have their own understanding of Islam. Everyone can open the Quran. This is what I understand,
That's right. It becomes more fluid because everyone, as you say, can interpret how they want. It's just so open to interpretation.
Yeah, look, you'll have 2 billion different understandings of Islam because everyone's going to interpret the Quran the way they understand it. Whereas it's the Prophet who taught us what the Quran means. In fact, the Sahaba used to ask the Prophet all the time, what does this verse mean? And he used to explain to them. Like I had this debate with one of these, people who called themselves Qur'anian. And it's very interesting. And I asked this person, look, how do you pray?
Good question. Because
if you look at the Quran, it only tells us, the sum of the movements in a prayer, like sajda, ruku, and things like that. But there's no details.
Very little details.
And the number of rakats. Then how do you stand? How do you tie your hands? How do you face Qibla? All the little details, we don't get them from the Quran. Quran doesn't go into specifics. just commands us to pray. And this person said, you just do the way that the Quran says. That's it. You can do the prayer the way you like. And then he tried to come back at me, and he said, "What about thing? Does the Hadith describe the prayer in detail?" And then I gave him this Hadith where the noble Prophet ﷺ says, "Perform your prayers just as the way I pray, just as the way I pray." And then he goes, "Look, it doesn't describe it in detail." Still, I said, that's comical. This when the Prophet passed away, there was over 100,000 Sahabis, and they all watched how he prayed, and they prayed that way. And there is, I think, discipline in Islam called usul al-fiqh.
Very sophisticated,
Very sophisticated. All the little details, how you stand, how you, make takbir, how you tie your hands, all the little tiny details, have been established. And all of these things go back to how Prophet prayed. And where did the Prophet learn that from? From Jibril. From Jibril. And then some of them comes, they go, oh, there was, salat before the thing, Qur'an as well. Like before Islam.
What's their point with that?
So, they're saying that this, don't say we learned all these details from the Prophet. But before the Prophet, it wasn't as disciplined as this, or with all these little tiny details. There was like sajda and all of these things that the previous prophets did them.
It's like pilgrimage. There was pilgrimage before that, but it doesn't mean that, that doesn't really point.
Doesn't point to anything. All the rukuns we learn from the prophets.
It gets refined. I guess it was refined with our prophet. Peace be upon him. There was fasting before Islam.
Fasting before too,
our prophet.
But how do we fast in Islam?
How do we fast? There's clear rules and regulations. I guess, it's going back to that person who you said, you pray as you want. How was he praying? Like, was his prayers, did it look different to other people?
Well, I don't think, to be honest, he was praying. My view, but his argument was you can pray at any time the way you want. As long as you do the sajda and the ruku, which is mentioned in the Quran, there's no specific way, All of the Muslims can just pray the way they like then, This is my prayer, this is my prayer. There is no discipline, And this has got nothing to do with Islam,
I'm just thinking about Mu'adh ibn Jabal. He went to Yemen, and when he was going, our Prophet asked him, because he's a scholar of his time, and he's going to a new area where there's a lot of people who aren't Muslim. And he clearly, our Prophet asked him, where are you going to look if you can't find a source? He says to the Quran. He goes, what if it's not in there? He goes, then your life, basically your sunnah. And our Prophet obviously endorses this. And I suppose when you strip this away from Islam, from Muslims, it completely changes the whole religion.
It sounds to me like they're trying to corrupt Islam. That's what it is. And I'm pretty sure that most of these people who call themselves Qur'anists don't even pray, or pray when they want, something like that. It makes religion much easier to live according to that. They don't want that responsibility, I think. You don't follow Islam like that. Moreover, how logical it is, as I said, you got 1,400 years of scholarship. You have towering imams, people like Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam, Maliki, Ahmed bin Hanbal. There's many more jurists, Imamain, all of these jurists have established all these little fine details based on the prophetic practice, and you're saying they were all wrong. They were all wrong. This is the way you should do it. Where do you get your information?
It's true, and you know what worries me? I feel that some people who are not fully aware of its implications of going Qur'anian, like you're basically everything, like from your, like we said, salat, your fasting, your hajj. Everything gets affected if you try to strip it away from the hadith.
Definitely.
And it completely, the religion would look so differently. And I think some people who are innocently thinking, let's just focus on the Quran, don't really understand the implications, as you said, like with the scholars.
It'll be dismantling religion, religious practices. But in reality, of course, Our main objective is to follow the Quran. We have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
The Quran is enough for us. That slogan, it fits all
Yes.
Muslims anyway. Yeah,
It
of course
does.
it's enough
It
for
does.
us. But who taught the Quran to us? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And look, the Quran itself commands us to follow the Prophet. Ali Imran, verse 31. Kul in kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattabi'uni yuhbibkumullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, my Rasul, my Habib, tell them, if they love Allah, tell them to follow you, obey you. Very clear, very clear. So those who love Allah supposed to follow the noble Prophet, his path. And in regards to the Quran, theological things to do with Aqidah, creed, 90% of it, we get it from the Quran. More than 90%, we learn it from the Quran. But things to do with practical issues, practice, worship, like you mentioned before, to all the little details, 70% we get it from Sunnah.
And that makes sense because it's practical. It's things that have to be shown how it's done. Whereas theology, it's philosophy, or it's theoretical. When I say theoretical, it's knowledge-based.
Yeah, knowledge.
But when you have something that's practical, you need to see how it plays out, how you actually implement it. So it makes
you need
sense.
to have a person that's showing you as well. You need to have a guide. I always say it in a humorous way. Can you go and get a book on, for example, brain surgery and read it? This is enough for me to, operate on someone's brain. Can you say that? You kill the person, and no one would allow that anyway in the world.
Good example.
Yeah, so you got to follow a person who's done it, who's an expert on that, a specialist, and they teach you because they're the experts, it's like saying, look, I love physics. I read all the, Albert Einstein's books, but I don't need to accept what Einstein thinks, how he practiced physics. That's comical because it is his book. So Quran was revealed to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Allah, spoke to him, through wahi. Yeah. So who would know Islam better than him? You got to follow Islam as the way he practiced it.
He was chosen as the person
for that duty, yes.
For that duty, and therefore he is the best one to be followed in, I guess, understanding that message.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good conversation. That was very interesting. Thank you for your extremely valuable insight. I hope you all enjoyed it as well. And see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.